Ethan Cole was 16 the day his foster mother locked the front door and slid his backpack through a 6-inch gap. 2 shirts, a pair of worn jeans, a broken watch, and $41 crumpled at the bottom. The woman's voice was flat through the door. The check stopped coming. "You're not my problem anymore." Ethan stood on the porch for a long time. The November wind off the river cut through his hoodie like it wasn't even there. The sky was the color of wet cement. The street was empty. He could smell wood smoke from a neighbor's chimney, warm lives behind closed curtains. "If I don't figure something out tonight, I'm sleeping in the cold," he thought. By evening, his hands were shaking and his lips had gone numb. He walked along the waterfront because it was the only place nobody told him to move along. Docks, old pilings, the smell of diesel and rotting wood. That's when he saw the sign. Hand-painted on a sheet of plywood leaning against a chain-link fence. "Barge for sale. As is. $75. Inquire at slip 9. Something about it pulled at him. He didn't know why. Maybe because it was the only thing in the world cheaper than he felt. Slip 9 was at the far end of a crumbling marina. Most of the boats were gone. The ones that remained sat low in the water, forgotten. And at the very end, tied to a post with fraying rope, sat the ugliest vessel Ethan had ever seen. A flat-bottom river barge, maybe 40 feet long. The hull was streaked with rust. The deck was warped. A small cabin sat near the stern, its door hanging from one hinge. The whole thing listed slightly to the left, like it was tired of floating. "Kid, you looking for something?" The voice came from behind him. A man stepped out of a polished white boat, 2 slips over. Breast jacket, gold watch. The name stitched into his cap read Garrett Hale. His smile was the kind that measured people before greeting them. Ethan pointed at the barge. "How much?" Hale laughed. "He's serious? That thing's been sinking for 3 years. I've been trying to get the marina to haul it out and scrap it." A woman on the next dock looked over, shook her head. Hale crossed his arms. "Kid, you don't want that. That's not a boat. That's a liability." Ethan stared at the barge. The rust. The sagging roof. The water pooling on the deck. "They're right. This is insane." He turned to leave. Got 2 steps. And then what? Sleep under a bridge? Wait for someone to care? Nobody was coming. Nobody ever had. Ethan turned back. "$75, he said. "Cash." Hale stared at him, then shrugged. "Your funeral." He took the bills, signed a piece of notebook paper, and walked away laughing. Ethan stood alone on the dock. Wind pushed across the water, rocking the barge against the pilings with a low groan. The smell of river mud and old metal filled his nose. He stepped aboard. The deck shifted under his weight. Every board creaked. Inside the cabin, it was worse. Water stains covered the ceiling. The floor was soft in places, rotted through in others. A rusted propane stove sat in the corner. No electricity, no heat. A smile porthole let in fading gray light. "This is mine," Ethan whispered. He wasn't sure if that felt good or terrifying. That first night nearly broke him. Temperature dropped hard after midnight. The river wind found every crack in the cabin walls. Ethan stuffed newspaper into the gaps, wrapped himself in a moving blanket he found shoved under a bench, and lay on the damp floor, shaking. He could hear water lapping against the hull inches from his head. Something dripped. Constantly. Sleet came in fragments, cold fragments. Morning arrived slow and gray. Ethan's whole body ached, but he got up. He walked to the public library before it opened and waited on the steps, breath fogging. When the doors unlocked, he went straight to the reference section. Boat repair, fiberglass patching, marine engines, plumbing basics. He read until the words blurred together. Back at the barge, reality was heavier than any book. The hull had 3 places where water seeped in. The bilge pump was seized. The engine below deck was a dead block of corroded iron. Ethan didn't even know what half the parts were called. He started with what he could see. Bailing water by hand with a cut-off milk jug. Scraping rust with a piece of broken glass. Sealing cracks with roofing tar he found in a dumpster behind a hardware store. Days blurred together. Cold mornings. Long walks to the library. Nights spent on his knees in the cabin. Hands raw, patching and scraping and learning by failing. He scavenged constantly. Marinas threw out more than people realized. Frayed rope. Bent cleats. Half-used cans of marine paint. Once he found an entire toolbox someone had left on a dock, rusted but functional. He cleaned every tool with motor oil and a rag. Then came the engine. Ethan spent a full week just getting the housing open. When he finally did, his stomach dropped. The cylinder head was cracked. Corrosion had eaten through gaskets. A critical water pump impeller had disintegrated into rubber dust. Of course, he muttered. Of course it's worse than I thought. He needed parts. Real parts. He tried the marine supply store on 5th Street. Walked in with river mud on his boots and grease on his face. A man behind the counter looked him up and down. We don't do charity, kid. I'm not asking for charity. I need a water pump impeller for a 4-cylinder marine diesel. The man snorted. You can barely afford the door handle. Get out. Ethan left. His face burned. That night he ate half a can of beans and stared at the dead engine until his eyes ached. More days. More failures. He found an impeller at a salvage yard 2 towns over. Walked 4 hours each way. It didn't fit. He modified it with a file, grinding for hours until his fingers cramped. It still didn't seat right. One night, everything collapsed. Ethan was trying to force the impeller housing closed. His wrench slipped. Knuckles smashed against the engine block. Blood welled up fast and hot. He threw the wrench. It clanged off the cabin wall and skidded across the floor. I can't do this. His voice cracked in the dark. This is pointless. I'm 16 years old, living on a piece of garbage that's going to sink. He climbed up to the deck, sat on the edge with his legs hanging over the water. The river was black. The cold was absolute. His hands were bleeding and shaking and useless. Nobody cares if you fix this. Nobody even knows you're here. Just walk away. Find a shelter. Give up. For a long time, he didn't move. Then his eye caught something. Down through the open cabin hatch, moonlight fell across the back wall, and he noticed it for the first time. A seam. A thin, deliberate line in the wood paneling behind the engine, almost invisible under the grime. Ethan stared at it. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. One more try, he whispered. He climbed back down. Ignored the blood on his knuckles. Ignored the cold. He went back to the impeller, seated it again, slower this time, patient, adjusting by fractions of a millimeter. He worked through the night. The river rocked the barge. Wind moaned through the hull. Then he turned the key. A click. A groan. A shudder that ran through the entire vessel. The engine caught. It was rough. It coughed. It rattled like it might shake itself apart. But it ran. Smoke curled from the exhaust port. Heat rose from the block. The barge vibrated with something Ethan had never felt on it before. Life. He stood there, hands trembling, tears running down his face, not because the engine worked, but because he hadn't walked away. Change came slowly. Ethan started offering to pump out bilge water for other boats at the marina. $5 a job, then small engine repairs. Then electrical work he taught himself from library books and online tutorials at the public computer lab. People noticed, not all at once. A fisherman brought him a broken trolling motor. A woman asked him to patch her kayak. An old man with a sailboat offered him $20 to clean his hull. Each job taught him something. Each dollar went back into the barge. New plywood for the deck, a second-hand propane heater, caulking, paint. Winter softened in the spring. The barge stopped leaking. The engine ran smoother. Ethan built shelves in the cabin, organized his tools, installed a proper lock on the door. It still wasn't pretty, but it was solid. People at the marina stopped looking through him. They nodded. They waved. They started calling him by name. One afternoon in early May, a white boat pulled into the marina. Polished, expensive, familiar. Garrett Hale stepped onto the dock. He looked different, strained. His gold watch was gone. He walked down to slip 9 and stopped, stared at the barge. It was clean now, repainted, functional. A small hand-lettered sign read, Coal Marine Repair. Hale cleared his throat. I heard you fix engines. Ethan set down his wrench, wiped his hands. He recognized the look on Hale's face. Pride fighting need. He'd seen it in the mirror 100 times. What's wrong with yours? Hale exhaled. Transmission seized. 2 mechanics already looked at it. Boat said it's shot. Need the whole boat towed to the city. Silence between them. The water lapped against the dock. This was the moment. Ethan could turn him away. Could remind him of that night, the laughter, the funeral comment, the dismissal. He had every right. Instead, Ethan nodded. Bring it over. I'll take a look. Hale blinked. That's it? No lecture? Ethan shrugged. Boats don't care about grudges. Neither do I. The repair took a day and a half. Ethan found the problem, a stripped coupling in the transmission housing. He machined a replacement from salvage stock. When the engine turned over clean, Hale stood watching with his hands in his pockets. You're good at this, Hale said quietly. Ethan tightened the last bolt. It runs. That's what matters. Hale paid, nodded once, left without another word. But something had shifted, not just between them. Inside Ethan, he understood now. Winning wasn't about making someone else feel small. It was about becoming someone who didn't need to. Summer came hot and slow. Ethan's repair business grew. He hired a kid from the local shelter to help with sanding and painting. Then another. He taught them what the library had taught him. One evening, after a long day, Ethan finally turned his attention to that seam in the cabin wall. The one he'd noticed months ago in the moonlight. He'd been too busy to investigate, too focused on survival. But now, with the cabin quiet and the river still, he knelt down and ran his fingers along the edge. Something's here, he murmured. He pried the panel away carefully. Behind it, tucked into a narrow space between the inner and outer hull, was a waterproof metal box, sealed tight, heavy. Ethan's heart hammered. He carried it to his workbench and opened it. Inside was a leather diary, worn soft with age, water stain at the edges, but intact, and beneath it, a small velvet pouch. He opened the pouch first. Gold coins, old ones, heavy in his palm. You've got to be kidding me. He set the coins aside and opened the diary. The name inside the front cover, written in careful cursive, read Margaret Cole, his mother's name. Ethan's breath stopped. He'd never known her. She died when he was 2. No one in the foster system ever told him anything real about her. She was just a name on a file. A ghost. But here in her handwriting, she was alive. The early pages described the barge. She'd lived on it before Ethan was born. She wrote about the river, the sound of rain on the cabin roof, the way fog rolled in at dawn. She wrote about being alone and finding peace in it. Then the entry shifted. I bought this barge because no one else wanted it. Maybe that's why I love it. I know what it feels like to be written off. Ethan's throat tightened. The later pages were about him, about being pregnant, about fear and hope tangled together. If you ever find this, it means the river kept it safe. I hid what little I had where only patience could reach it. Not for the lucky, not for the clever, for the one stubborn enough to stay. He turned to the last page. You are more than what they told you. You always were. The garage was silent. Just the creak of the hull and the distant sound of water. Ethan closed the diary, pressed it against his chest, sat there in the quiet for a very long time. She had been here, in this exact cabin. She had touched these walls. She had hidden this box knowing someday, maybe, someone with enough stubbornness and need would find it. And it had been him. Ethan didn't spend the gold on himself. He used it to lease the empty warehouse at the end of the marina, turned it into a workshop and training center for kids aging out of foster care. No applications, no interviews, just show up and be willing to learn. He kept the diary in a locked drawer beside his bed. Read it on hard nights. Let her voice remind him why he stayed. And the Barge, that rotting $75 wreck that everyone laughed at, sat in slit 9. Cleaned. Painted. Running. A small light always glowing in the cabin window. Because Ethan finally understood. The Barge was never the gift. The struggle was. And the woman who left that diary behind knew something most people never learn. The things nobody else wants are often the things worth fighting for the most. So let me ask you something. Have you ever held on to something everyone told you to let go of? Something broken? Something forgotten? Something that didn't make sense to anyone but you? And did you stay? If this story made you feel something even for a second, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.